back in the Cold War. Ronald Reagan won the Cold War without ever firing a shot because he believed in that concept of peace by strength. And contrary to what some in Washington, not Congressman Ridgel, but some in Washington seem to think, the world is not a safer place today. The world is not becoming a safer place. And it is no time for the United States of America to embark on a program of unilateral disarmament. And, just a few months ago, this word that Scott used, sequestration, was not even a word in our vocabulary, was it? We didn't even know what sequestration meant. Today, we're all too familiar with what sequestration means. Sequestration was that concept that the Congress and the President approved back a year or so ago. Really, it was intended to be the sword of Damocles, hanging above the heads of that so-called super committee. Remember that super committee that was somehow supposed to figure out how we start dealing with spending and bringing down the national debt. And the thought was that this sequestration, this sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of the super committee, would force them to get their job done. But they didn't get their job done. And now we're left with the sword of Damocles. In the United States federal budget today, defense makes up 20% of the federal budget. But under sequestration, it will take 50% of the budget cuts. Now that is unwise. Indeed, that is foolish. It is unjustified, and it will leave our country vulnerable, and it will leave our country less capable of defending itself in what continues to be a very dangerous world. Now, we all know that the federal government has got to cut spending. Can't keep spending money we don't have, making promises we can't keep, and mortgaging our children's future in the process. We all know that. But the cuts have to be fair. They have to be smart, and they have to be targeted. And when you ask the defense system of this country to take 50% of the cuts, when it's only 20% of the budget, those are not smart, targeted cuts. Now let me just share with you some numbers on what this sequestration plan that President Obama continues to defend. Let me just share with you some numbers of what it will mean to the military. Under sequestration, the projections are that we could see a reduction in force of active duty military personnel by over 200,000 troops. That is not wise. We would see the levels of the United States Navy reduced to levels they haven't seen since 1914. Wow. We would see levels of the U.S. Army decrease to levels they haven't seen since 1940. And we would see the U.S. Air Force reduced to the lowest levels they've seen in history. Now, my friends, no one can say that those are smart cuts. No one can say that they're targeted cuts. No one can say that those cuts are in the best interest of this country. They are indefensible when it comes to enabling the military to do that thing that it is sworn to do, which is defend and protect the people of the United States of America. And rather than defending those cuts, and rather than doing what President Obama is doing, and I'll be very candid about this, he is using the threat of those cuts, he's using the nation's military as a political pawn in a high-stake game of poker to try to get Republicans in Congress to blink and agree to massive tax increases on families and businesses in America today. That's what the president is doing. That's not leadership. And that's not carrying out your responsibilities as the commander-in-chief of the nation's military. Now, economically, sequestration would also have a devastating impact on Virginia's economy. A few weeks ago, there was a report released at George Mason University which projected that sequestration, if fully implemented, would result in the loss of 207,000 jobs in Virginia alone. 207,000 jobs. Now, Governor McDonnell and I have spent the last 30 months trying to get our economy moving again and create jobs in a difficult national environment. We've had some success. We've created 151,000 net new jobs in Virginia in the last 30 months. That's enabled us to reduce our state's unemployment rate from 7.4% to 5.9%, better than almost anybody in the country. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. Every single net new job that we've created plus 50,000 more would be wiped out through the impact of sequestration. Now, make no mistake about it. If this is allowed to go forward, economically, it will drive our nation's economy right back into recession. But from a military standpoint, it will leave the country vulnerable in its ability to properly defend itself in a world that continues to be very, very dangerous. There's only one way that we're going to be able to stop it, because the truth is, I think Scott would agree, the likelihood of the Congress being able to do anything on this issue in the midst of a presidential campaign is extremely limited. Everybody's looking to November to see what's going to happen with this important issue. And I would just say to you, again, very candidly, this is the time. I remember when one of the best classes I ever took in high school was typing. I didn't know that at the time because that was before keyboards and things, but man, I can fly on a keyboard now because I learned to type, okay? And I remember the first line I ever learned to type. Any of you ever have typing class? You probably learned this too. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. You remember that? Yeah. Well, I would just say I think we're something like 78 days, 79 days away from Election Day. Now is the time for all good men and all good women to come to the aid of their country. And we need everybody that cares about getting this nation turned around and back on track. We need everybody who cares about getting the economy moving again and creating jobs. We need everybody who cares about getting spending under control and bringing down the debt in a responsible way. We need everyone who cares about the military strength of the United States, our standing and reputation in the world, and the welfare of the men and women who don the uniform. We need them fully engaged in this battle for the next 78 or 79 days. We hope that you will all become a part of this Veterans for Romney coalition in Virginia. And I just hope you'll work for the next 78 or 79 days like the future of our country depends on it. Because in a very real way, I believe the future of our country does depend on it. I'll close with just this thought. You know, President Obama in his campaign for re-election has talked a lot about transforming America. And I have no doubt, after watching him for the last 4 years, that the president truly does want to transform America. Unfortunately, he wants to transform it into something that you and I wouldn't recognize. He wants to transform it into another Western European socialistic state. Look, Europe isn't working in Europe. And there's no reason to believe that Europe would work here. On the other hand, President Romney, if you listen to the words, and words matter, doesn't talk about transforming America. He talks about restoring America. Restoring America. Restoring America to those fundamental principles and values upon which our nation was founded and grown strong. Let me tell you something, my friends. The values that made America the greatest nation on the face of the earth today haven't changed. It's the same values. It's we who've changed. You know, we've stopped embracing the values. We don't need to transform America. We need to restore America. The battle for restoring America among Virginia's veterans starts today. And I hope you'll all join us in getting behind America's comeback team of Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, of taking the country back, getting it back on the right track, addressing these critically important problems that we have today. And they're big problems. You know, make no mistake about it, they're big problems. But you know what? I still believe in America. And Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan still believe in America. And President Obama may want us to think that, you know, high unemployment rates and spending and debt and military vulnerability, you know, he may want us to think that that's the new normal in America, but we reject that notion. It doesn't have to be that way, my friends. It can be better again. We can restore America, and with your help, that's exactly what America's comeback team will start doing on November the 6th. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank Governor Bowling. We couldn't have asked for a better surrogate for Governor Romney, and we appreciate your comments, as we do, Congressman Mitchell. And you can see why Lieutenant Governor Bowling is such a great surrogate for Governor Romney and will make a great next governor of Virginia. Now, given the fact, as you can well imagine, this is a political rally, and like all political events where politicians speak, we've gone over. But we're going to open this up to some questions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite the panelists, the speakers, to come up here, but I'm also going to invite Admiral Gruthausen, Admiral Carr, Tom Birch, Tom Jones, Jay McConville, also members of the Veterans Advisory Committee, to come up as backdrop. Feel free to direct your question to one of the principals. If you're going to make a statement, please keep it to 30 seconds or less. Because we want to hear your thoughts and your views. And so that's equally important in not only getting your questions answered, but making sure that your comments are heard. And so with that, I'll be the moderator here. And so please, we'll, at least for a couple of minutes, take your questions. So who has a question or a comment? Sir.
I had a question. I went and had an email, Scott Ridgel, last week or something about, in regards to the voter fraud in our troops. Are they going to get their ballots on time, or are they going to go through the same crap that we did last time?
Yeah. You're looking at me. Why don't you look at me? We're going to get an answer to your email.
Each and every American has, obviously, who qualified, have the right and should have easy access to voting. That said, our men and women in uniform, those who are serving, and particularly those who are in harm's way and deployed, every effort must and will be made, and every vote must count. And so working with a lot of good folks, both Republicans and Democrats within the House and the Senate, we'll make sure and certainly do everything humanly possible to make sure that every single vote of every single American, and your question is specific to those in uniform, will be counted on November the 6th. And you have my assurance, my personal assurance, that I'll commit to the time and the resources and the energy needed to do everything we can from Virginia 2 to make sure that sacred right is protected, because indeed that's in part what they're defending when they're out there in harm's way. Thank you.
Who else? Sir.
Yeah, I wondered, since all of the czars that Comrade Obama appointed were done so without the permission of Congress, is there any way that Congress can ensure that their salaries come straight out of his personal paycheck and allowances rather than out of the public treasury? Serious question.
Well, I can see where we're going. I think I might be here for a little while. Happy to do so. Look, from the first day that I had the privilege to serve in Congress, we have made a series, many votes that would, in a very wise and I believe in responsible way, both control and contain the size of federal government, and at the same time unleash the greatest job-producing engine the world's ever known, the American entrepreneur. And as part of that whole effort, all that series of votes, I am quite confident, and we have cast, I believe, plus or minus 1,000 votes. So I'm going to ask for a little grace on this, but I'm quite certain that we have in fact voted to do just that, to reduce the funding of what have been referred to as the czars, so that we get back to more of a regular order, regular process where they have to go through the Senate for approval. And so many of those bills, sadly and disturbingly and indisputably, sit on one man's desk right now, Senator Harry Reid. And this is where our government is really getting wrapped around the axle. Our government is not intended or designed to operate under this method. We all learned in, 8th or 9th grade in a civics class that the House passes a bill, it goes to the Senate can amend the bill or can initiate its own depending on what the topic is. And then we go to conference. It's not happening. Empirically, we can show you can just look, that the bills are not coming back to the House to go to conference. And this is where Congress is failing at this point. And indeed, not only do we need to get Governor Romney in and make him President Romney and Vice President Ryan, we need a new majority leader in the United States Senate.